Well, on behalf of the ISC team, I want to thank you for taking time out of your evening to be here with us. This is the first of a series of webinars that are based around traceability. This evening, we're going to be looking at sheep and goat electronic identification. At the end of tonight, I'll talk about the next couple of webinars in the series that are coming up. Now, apart from our presenters here this evening, who I'll introduce in a moment, we have Xander working in the background from the ISC communications team, and he'll be feverishly working away with your questions, as will the rest of the team. Now, thank you for those who have already submitted questions in advance during the registration process. For everyone else, please use the Q&A box to ask any questions. If you move your cursor to the bottom of the screen, you'll see there is a Q&A button, or it may be at the top if you're working from an iPad or other tablet device. Just click a tap on that and type your questions in. If we can't get to them tonight, don't worry, we'll be answering them offline, and we'll include those answers in the Q&A transcript we'll be circulating afterwards. Alongside that, this is being recorded, so we'll also include a link to the video so that you can review it at any time. Now, just a reminder with questions, we are looking for questions that we can all learn from rather than statements. We won't be talking about the pros and cons of the government's requirements that producers must use eIDs, but rather how we can help everyone to understand and meet those requirements to maintain the integrity and reputation of Australia's red meat industry. Now, before I start, I just want to quickly explain the sessions that we're going to be presenting tonight and introduce you to your presenters. First up, Elizabeth Bradley, the ISC's Manager of Policy and Compliance, is going to be speaking to the NLIS and why it's important. Natasha Teddy, the Group Manager of ISC Operations, is going to then speak to sheep and goat eID, what we're here for tonight, followed by ISC Operations Analyst George Basher. He'll be taking through a demonstration of property-to-property transfers in the NLIS. And Digital Product Manager John Asimus will be talking about adding devices to a consignment using an an Electronic National Vendor Declaration. And finally, Corinne Dooley is joining us. She's the Policy Director of Sheep Producers Australia. She'll be speaking to the role of her organisation and its involvement in eIDs. Now, before I hand over to Elizabeth, I'm just going to briefly present a summary of the NLIS property identification codes and which animals are subject to an eID. Now, the National Livestock Identification System contains three elements that enable the lifetime traceability of animals. One is that all physical locations are identified by means of a property identification code, or PIC, which I'll speak to a bit more in a moment. Number two is that all livestock are identified by an NLIS accredited visual or electronic ear tag or other device. And three is that all livestock location data and movements are recorded in the NLIS database. So what is a property identification code? Property Identification Code, or PIC, is an 8-character code allocated by the relevant authority in each state or territory to identify livestock producing property. Producers must have a PIC to move stock on and off a property. This forms the basis of Australia's food safety and traceability programs. The NLIS relies on PICs to ensure traceability of animals throughout the supply chain. These devices are issued to specific PICs and applied to any livestock that are born there or have been moved there and require a replacement tag. All transfers on the NLIS database must occur between valid PICs. PICs with any kind of issue are assigned a status in the NLIS database. Statuses are also assigned to PICs to provide livestock to particular markets, such as the European Union, for example. processors, producers should make sure that their pick is valid and their contact details are on record with their relevant state or territory authority and are up to date so that they can be reached in the event of an emergency disease outbreak. Now moving on to which animals need an eID, or cattle. Sheep, if they were born after 1st of January 2025. In Western Australia, it's all sheep from the 1st, it will be all sheep from the 1st of July 2026. Nationally, all sheep from the 1st of January 2027. With goats, if they're farmed and managed in any way, they'll require an eID. For harvested rangeland goats, it will be a no if there's a HRG accreditation held and HRG National Vendor Declaration is used. And with that out of the way, let's begin tonight's presentations. I'm now going to hand you over to Elizabeth, who is going to take you through the NLIS.
Thank you, Jack, and hi everyone. So before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty around sheep and goat eID, I just wanted to run through a little bit about how NLIS devices or ear tags get approved to be used under the NLIS system. So effectively, before any device can be sold as NLIS approved, it has to go through a very rigorous process that involves a lot of trialling, testing, auditing, and government and industry oversight effectively. So there's lots of oversight in terms of which devices get approved for use. And we have strict standards that they need to meet in terms of their durability and also the electronic components of it as well. The suppliers, the people who manufacture these devices, need to seek that approval through Integrity Systems Company, and they can only use our NLIS logo on those devices once they're approved, and then we give them the permissions to upload those devices to the NLIS database once you producers order them for use. So we really control who's supplying these devices, and there's a really strict approval process around how they become approved in the first place. As an overview, really simply, there is a formal assessment process that comes through testing. We have an electronic lab that tests all the electronics and the readability. We audit the facility, make sure that they're doing the correct quality processes and delivering to the NLIS requirements. All the devices have to go through a 3-year farm trial. So there's multiple properties across different types, different breeds and classes of livestock in most cases, to make sure that they're fit for purpose on as many environments as possible. These devices go through independent supervision, and they have assessments at 6, 12, 24 and 36 months through that 3-year process. It's a really tight retention rate. So at the end of the 3-year process, if more than 3.5% of those devices have been lost or fallen out or don't read electronically, those devices cannot be approved, and they're not being able to move into that commercial supply. So it's a really tight, strict requirement. And we do see a lot of trials end before they even get sort of to the 12-month period because they're not meeting those requirements as they process through. All of this data and all this information is overseen by the NLIS Device Standards Committee, which is made up of representatives from industry and also government to make sure that it's meeting these requirements, it's got that independent oversight. We really take a lot of care in looking at if they're retaining well, they're readable, they're suitable. And we also audit the suppliers very frequently, and we get copies of all the complaints that they receive, as well as follow up on any complaints that we receive as ISC. We make sure that if there are any issues with devices not working as expected, that we follow up and remove them from the market as well. So I really highlight that if you have any issues with devices that you do buy, to contact the supplier in the first instance to try and get a resolution and potentially replacement under warranty, or contact ISC and we can help investigate that matter with you as well. Now, in terms of ordering your devices, you can purchase them from a range of locations, so rural retailers, online stores in particular, and directly from some suppliers as well. you need to have your property identification code ready in order to place that order, because we need to know that to authorise it, but also to upload it to the right PIC in the NLIS database. There are some notes. If you're from Queensland, you need to first talk to Queensland DAF to get your authorisation form. And if you're in Victoria, you can order through the Agriculture AgVic tag room to place that order and get the Victorian process through there. It's really important that you select what species you're needing tags for, because the physical tag designs for goat and sheep are the same, but they are coded differently and printed differently. So we need to be aware of what species you're actually seeking and making sure you're applying those right species to the right animals. The other key important thing when you're ordering is making sure that you have an applicator, or you're using the right applicator for what tags you're buying. And that's really important because that can really affect your retention, and the application can fail and cause you lots of headaches if you're not using the right applicator as well. It's important to pre-order your devices. They do laser and code them and print them and then have to post them to you. So they make them to order. So it's important to think about when you might need them and ordering them beforehand. There are also lots of state rebates available as well. So you can check with your state and territory, depending on where you're located, if there's still rebates available for you as well. Some other considerations around your NLIS devices. So the electronic devices have numbers and they get uploaded to the NLIS database. And each device requires, as I said, a specific applicator. So it's really important to make sure that you're reading that application instructions, especially if it's a device you haven't used before, and looking at where they're recommending the placement. Each tag can be slightly different, so it's important to know the best placement for each one as well. Again, if you do experience any issues, it's best to talk to the supplier first, because they have requirements on them to make sure that their devices do the right thing, and they have warranty replacements, etc., that they can facilitate with you. And then if it's unresolved or you really feel like you want to talk to us about it, we're more than happy to take that issue and investigate it as well. I would also suggest that before committing to a large order, especially if you haven't tried a specific tag type before, try a smaller quantity first and see if that design is going to fit for your type of livestock. Ear sizes and shapes can change across the different breeds, so it's important to consider what's best for you, or potentially what's right for your environment as well. And remember, you only need one eID per animal. You don't need to apply a second eID. We're not under the visual system anymore. And that one eID has to stay with that animal for its lifetime. So one eID only, no extra tags needed. And if you are introducing livestock onto your property, it's a good tip to have some pink post-breeder tags as well, because if for some reason it does stop working or it falls out, you can pop a pink post-breeder tag in on your property, and that gives it its traceability from your property as well. Now, that's all from me tonight. So I'm going to hand over to Natasha, who's going to run you through the rest of the eID requirements. Thanks, Natasha.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So as Elizabeth said, you can see there for the sheep and the goats that those post-breeder tags are pink. For the different year, there is different colours aligned with the different years of use. So as you can see, yellow for 2021 to 2029, through to black for 2024 to 2032. As we go into the current year of 2026, that's an orange tag. Light green for 2027 and purple for 2028. So the year of birth colours are mandatory in WA and recommended in other states. But as you can see on the left-hand side, the yellow yellow is the preferred breeder colour tag, or the year of birth tag. But as already stated, it's compulsory in WA to have those year of birth coloured tags. Next slide, please. So Elizabeth mentioned the placement. Look, there's been quite a few trials done by our colleagues in MLA, and it's really clear that this placement becomes really important around retention. So only ever apply one eID to one animal. Use the correct applicator for the devices. So as Elizabeth said, it's really important to use the correct applicator. So if you're using an Orflex tag, they'll have an Orflex applicator that they recommend. Sharewell, they'll have a Sharewell one. It's actually not one size fits all when it comes to applicators. And as Elizabeth said, when we test them for retention in those field trials, we always make sure we use the manufacturer's applicator. If you don't, we can't guarantee those same results. So please just think about that when you're making a choice on tags and applicators. Make sure the pin is sharp and it's not bent. Incorrect application can damage devices. The correct placement is essential for retention, as I earlier said. Allow room for the air to grow if applying to lamb, kids or weaners. So just make sure we want that to get a good seal around it, and make sure that you disinfect the applicator between uses. It's really easy when you're in a hurry to just whack the tag in and get going, but it's really important to make sure that we get good healing around those tags to support retention. So please disinfect between the uses. Next slide, please. So we're talking about RFID tags, NLIS IDs and eIDs. So, for what do those numbers actually mean? Well, the RFID code is the eID code, and that is read by the scanner. A lot of people have got scanners on farm, and that's the code. So the first numbers are the manufacturer's code, and then the last numbers are the unique serial number. For an NLIS ID printed on tags, the first number is actually your property identification code, then the manufacturer's code, then the species code. And that's why having the right tags for the right species is so important, because when it gets uploaded into the database, it's actually done on what that tag species type is. So if you've gone and put a cattle tag in a sheep's ear, it's going to say it's a cattle beast. That's going to make it really difficult if we need to trace, and it's going to make it really difficult if you're ever going to send it to the sale yards. The next digit is for the year, and then the final 5 digits is for the serial number. Next slide, please. The other thing that we Jack briefly discussed before, was about harvested rangeland goats. And we've had a number of questions about why these animals can be moved without an eID. We worked with industry to come up with a solution, because it gets pretty dangerous when you're climbing into a pen with some wild goats. So we made up a system, or worked with industry to come up with a system that allowed for mod-based movements recorded on the NLIS database. So there is a separate HRG NVD that goes with these goats, and these goats are only allowed to go to slaughter or to a goat depot. So there's strict approval process around this, which requires state approval. There's also increased audit and oversight of producers and depots approved in the HRG module to ensure the integrity and ensure that they're in alignment with everything that underpins our red meat in Australia. Next slide, please. So this is the goat and the HRG NVD requirements. So they're actually a separate NVD or eNVD. So if you're sending goats that have been farmed domestically or been run in a managed way, they need to go on your goat NVD. If you are running up harvested rangeland goats, they can go on the NVD, and you can only access the HRG NVD if you're an accredited for the HRG program. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass over to George Basher now to take us through livestock movements.
Today I'll go through the transfer. So I'll log into the NLIS database. So next slide, please. Firstly, you have to ensure that, and I've just seen a lot of the Q&A, they're always talking about tagging all the livestock. Make sure all the animals are tagged with an NLIS approved device. So goat tags for goat, sheep tags for sheep, and cattle for cattle. They have to be tagged before they move off the property. And when you're moving animals off your property, fill out an LPA NVD. It's part of the LPA program. So if you're LPA accredited, then you need to ensure that you have a correctly filled out LPA NVD. That can be the book, or preferably the eNVD, which John will talk to you about a bit later. Next, please. So it's in every state and territory now, it's mandatory to upload data to the NLIS within 2 days when they arrive onto your property. So if you're purchasing animals, particularly from an online auction or from a neighbouring property, it's your obligation to notify the database. So online auctions don't do any transfers. A lot of people come to us and say, oh, the agent said they were going to do it, but when we talk to the agent, there's a misunderstanding. So please ensure, and I'll show you how to do this, and I'll show you how to check in a few minutes' time. So make sure that you do the transfer within 2 days in the NLIS database for all livestock coming onto your property. And always ask for an NVD. It's your guarantee of that stock, because it is a declaration. It's a signed declaration by the person who's selling the animals to you. And keep them handy. Keep them for 7 years as part of the LPA requirements. Next slide, please. There's a bit of information here. So some of the questions we've already answered. All sheep and goats born after 1 January 2025 need to be tagged with an eID. Before that, older stock can be with a visual tag. So there's just some information there which you can read later. HRG, or harvested rangeland goats, we talked about. So they are exempt, provided the picket source is part of the HRG program. What do you need to do? You need to get the list of tags, either the electronic tag using a scanner, or the NLIS tag if you want to visually read what's on the animal's ear. Maybe a bit hard, so it's not the preferred option. But if you're only buying 1 animal or 2 animals, it may be an easy option just to eyeball or get your camera out and take a photo of it. Have the NVD with you. So when you're doing the transfer on the NLIS database, have the LPA NVD paper ready or the eNVD document handy. Log into the database, and I'll show you how to do this. You want to notify the database of a movement, type in the details, and we'll see how you check. So next slide, please. And I'll go through the demonstration. So now in my screen now, this is the NLIS homepage. We haven't logged in yet. So we ask everyone to log in via MyMLA. That way you have access to, you can have all your accounts set up under MyMLA, your LPA account and your NLIS account set up under MyMLA. And if you log in via MyMLA, you can see the eNVDs. And John will show you that. So I'll click on login via MyMLA. My MLA email address and MLA password. I want to go into NLIS. I can, if I want to, go into my other accounts, MSA account, eNVD, LPA. This time here, we're just going to go to NLIS. Now I have 2 accounts. This is my producer account and my admin account. So we'll log into my producer account. Another advantage is you can have multiple accounts linked. So click into my producer account. This is the producer homepage now. Up the top here, we have help tools. Click on help tools. And these are all the help tools that are available for sheep mobs. Sheep individuals, more. Some of these are old, but they are still relevant. So these are all the tech tips. You click on them and they'll open up and they're guides to show you through. So the first thing I do is I just go hide the header up here in the top right. It just gives me more real estate and easier to demonstrate. So what do I want to do today? I want to work with sheep mobs or sheep individual. Now, if I want to add, if you don't have these listed on your account, you go to I want to do today and change my types of livestock. There we go. And now I can add goat individual. I can remove sheep mobs because I'm not buying any more mobs. I'm only buying lambs, so they want to be scanned, so I can get rid of that one. Continue. And now I've only got a new selection. So we're going to go sheep individual today. And what do I want to do? We're going to do a transfer. So we talked about this. I've purchased some sheep. I need to do those transfer the sheep onto my property. That's my legal obligation. So livestock have moved onto my property, sheep, goats. We've also included SA camelids, which are alpacas and llamas. So click on this. There we go. Now we'll do it on screen. It's a lot easier. So we're typing the details manually on screen. And we've got 6 questions we have to answer. This is where we enter in all the tag numbers. Sorry. Some tag numbers I got earlier. These are the tag numbers. Now, these are the visual tag numbers. So that's the NLIS ID, the number printed on the outside of the tag. And these are the numbers embedded in the tags. So you don't need to do both for the same tag, but I've just put them both up here so you can see what the difference is. So if you just get the visual tag, that is your eyeballing, you use that. If you have a scanner, you get these numbers. So where are they going to? They're going to my QAZZ property. I've got 2 properties here, and they're coming off my this is my drop down. So they're moving onto my property. I've got 2 properties linked to this. Although both these properties are mine, I still need to do the transfer. Still need to have an LPA NVD. So when I ask for the LPA NVD, we'll just do the 7, 4 7s, 4 8s. We're moving today, and we've actually got 30 head. There's not 30 tags here, but if I'm still buying animals that are older animals, this does 2 things in one. This does the individual tag transfer, so the electronic eID transfers, as well as the mob. So it does both. Now, if it's the same number of head, then you put in 8 and 8. So if there were only 8 animals, you bought 8 lambs, you simply just put the head count of 8. But if I had bought 18 animals, sorry, and 10 were not identified because they're older sheep, because they're born before 1 January 2025. You do that, hit continue. Now it's confirming. Do you want to move these animals, number of head, the property they're going from and to? You go yes, hit send. Now it's sent it off to the database already. And this was the original file that gives you a receipt number, transaction number. We actually call it an upload ID. So that's your receipt number. And we've broken the file up into 2. This is the movement of those 8 individual tag numbers, and this is the movement of a mob of 18. So I'll click on my transaction history down the bottom. And obviously the video will you're able to see the video and go through it. And simply saying what's happened is it's all worked. So it's all complete. So there's been no issue. We've got the upload ID. And if we want to look at the file, we can click on the file, and they're the tag numbers. So they've all moved from this property to this property, and they're all fine. So there's no issue with the tag numbers. They've been transferred, no problem. So we click on close. And these are hyperlinks, so you can click on them, you can open them. This is the second file, which doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but simply saying the number of head is 18. So as I said, it breaks the file up into 2, the individual animals, and then the total head count. So it does both in one hit. Close that window. And the very last thing, go back home. Now we want to check, did that happen? Or if someone told you we've done the transfer on your behalf, the agent said they've done it before you, or the person who you've purchased the animals from said we've done it for you, you go and you run a report. So the top half is when you want to change data, the bottom is to run reports. So I'll click on View, Generate All Reports. Now we'll look at livestock that have been transferred onto my property. What's moved on here today? There's the 8 head, which we just transferred now. That was the NVD number I just used, today's date, and there's the 8 individual head of animals I just moved. So that's how you do a transfer. That's how you check if the transfer has gone through. You do that through the transfer history, but you can also confirm here again. So it seems pretty straightforward. Obviously, the most difficult part is obtaining the tag numbers. Get that using a reader. Hopefully you can ask the person who sold you the animals if they have a reader or scan them. So that's the most difficult part. Apart from that, just copying and pasting data on screen. Just make sure you select the correct species, a sheep individual. goat individual. We don't have cattle individual, which has always been individual for cattle, so that'll always remain there. And if these aren't there, make sure you go into your home page and you want to change your types of livestock. And thank you. Yeah, hopefully you can go back through this video if it was pretty quick, but yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
So thanks everyone for joining tonight. My little bit of the demo is really just extending on what George has just gone through and highlighting some of the recent changes that we've done within eNVD to help kind of alleviate some of the admin burden of tags and devices. And putting them through and another avenue to facilitate that movement that George just demonstrated. So what I'll do is I'll just share my screen and we'll go through the web-based version of that. Okay, so as you can see, this is the web-based version of eNVD. And what we've done recently, these changes were released last year, is allow the ability for both the sender and the receiver to add a consignment or an eNVD, the individual device numbers. The reasons around this are kind of twofold, I suppose. From a sender's perspective, if you're sending or creating a consignment through eNVD, you have the opportunity to add those devices when you create the consignment, and we do a quick validation of those devices against the NLIS database, and we can call back some kind of common problems that usually kind of pop up when people try and do the transfers. I'll show you an example of that, but basically what I mean is that you as the sender can check to make sure that those devices are on your property already, that you're actually sending the right type of device. So we can check the species. So if you're doing consignment for sheep or goat, we can check that device is logged as a sheep or goat device within NLIS. And also just check to make sure that it hasn't kind of gone through the system and hasn't been marked as deceased or any of those kind of really basic checks. And what that does is that plays that back to you as soon as you add those devices. You can pick up those errors, amend them before you do the consignment, so that you're confident that when you do create the eNVD and you send it off to the destination, that the device information is accurate and up to date. And then as the second part of the demonstration, I'll do as a receiver, so someone getting a consignment through eNVD, and the major benefit of that is we can do what just George did and demonstrated through NLIS. We can actually facilitate that P2P movement through eNVD. So if you're just interacting with eNVD, you don't have to log out, go into another system, do the movement, and come back again. So it's just a little helper to make that process a little bit seamless. As we know that the industry is adjusting to the devices coming on to each of the individual animals. So what you can see here is just a couple of consignments that I'm moving today that I've already created. And we have these little visual indicators around the NLIS movement to help you through the process. But what I'll do is I'll just go down to this draft consignment that I've created. I'll show how you can add the devices and the steps that you take and the validations, so you can see them firsthand. And then, as I said, the second part I'll log in as a receiver and show you what it looks like from that end. So you can see that there's a draft consignment that we're moving tomorrow. To add the devices, we just go to the options menu, and just to add, this is only available within the web. So if you're using the eNVD app, it's not there at the moment. We are just kind of bedding it down and testing it through the web first before we extend it out to all the different platforms that we have available. We have an option here to add NLIS devices. So we just click on that, and it will throw up this page to ask you how you want to add the devices. We give you two options. One, we can upload from a file. We do take in most of the common formats from most of the readers, but it's a very basic file. You can just add each of the RFIDs from as George mentioned, comes from a reader, Or if you have a visual representation of those devices, it will also take on that visual reference where the pick is at the start. So we can upload a file with that information, or we can add it manually. So you can just cut and paste that information from wherever you hold it within your own processes on farm. For this demonstration, I'll just upload a file. So it's just simple. Choose a file which pops up a folder that you might have on your computer. For this first example, I'll load a file in that will kind of play back some errors so that you can see how we do the validation. Once a file is loaded, you can see it's loaded here. You just go on the next step. It goes and has a look at NLIS and plays back. So we can see with this file, we've detected an error and a couple of warnings. So what do they mean? So if you load in I don't know, like a scan from a tag that NLIS doesn't recognize, can play that back and say it's an invalid ID. So you need to recheck it. So you can either delete that from the consignment, it's just added an error, or go and amend it. The second validation, as I mentioned, these ones here are saying that the IDs that you're loaded are not currently registered to your pick from the from pick. So what that means is that you may have had animals from another pick, they've come onto your pick, you haven't done the transfer. This is playing that back to say, hey, you need to do the transfer onto your pick before you try and move them off. So that's quite important for lifetime traceability and things like that. So it's quite an important warning to amend before you go through with the consignment. So as you can see, there's a bunch of errors here. The other warning that as I mentioned too, I've loaded in a cattle tag and it's a sheep consignment, so that'll call that out as well. So some farms, like you guys will know, you might have multiple species on there. The IDs can get mixed up in the read, or things like that. So we can call that out, and you have a chance to amend it. So if I don't like that, for this demonstration, I'll delete them all and just reload them again. Just ask you, make sure that you're okay with that. So we can go in and add the devices again, and this time I'll add a file that'll go through okay. So just go through the same process. It's loaded up. Next step, it does the validation, and then it says, yep, great, no issues detected here. So all the IDs that we've loaded, they're all sheep, they're all on my pick. There's no other statuses that are coming back that are going to cause any issues. So they're ready to go. They're all loaded on that consignment, ready to be consumed by the receiver. So if I then have a look at, and just to give you an idea of where we're going with this, we're looking at this year to add that detail through this consignment so it can be consumed by processors and sale yards. So that's quite valuable. They have big third-party systems that they ingest the data. So that gives them those destinations a front runner for these devices, which is really good. So what I'll do is I'll have a look at this eNVD. I'll close it off. Won't just give it a double check that that's all good. Once it's okay, what I'll do is I'll then choose to submit that consignment. So what I do is I'll just go through that. It's all good. And what I want to do is push that through. Okay. All right, so now we've got that consignment up here and it's ready to go. The devices have been added, and that indicates that it's ready for a movement. So now I'll switch to the persona of someone who is receiving the consignment. Now it's really important when you're looking at eNVD, to do the movement, we need to make sure that you're acting on behalf of the NLIS account that you have. So as George mentioned, you'll have an LPA login and accreditation, but you also have an NLIS one. And as he mentioned, if you link them both through MyMLA, they'll both be available within this view. So if I go and have a look at the destination pick, which is this guy here, I will see that I'll see an incoming consignment that I just created. I know that it's submitted, but also I will need to switch to the NLIS ID to make sure that I can then do the movement. So to do that, I've got a bunch here just for testing purposes, but you can visually see this from the NLIS. So if I switch to that, I can then see this consignment and also the details related to it. So you can see that in this instance, this movement has already been complete. And that means that I've done the movement through eNVD and I can view the details of it. Now, if I want to link that back to the upload ID that George mentioned before to double check that that movement has been done, I get a visual confirmation here that the movement is complete. But also get that upload ID reference that he mentioned. So I can go back and check in the NLIS database that ID has been updated correctly and the movement has been done. I also have a visual reference here that it's been moved. So if I'm looking at it from a sender's perspective, and I want to check that I've sent these animals off to someone, and I want to check that they've done the transfer and they've done the transfer through eNVD, I can see it's visually moved here as well. So I can safely say that that full transfer has happened between me as the sender of the consignment and the receiver as doing it. Okay. I think that's it for me from the demonstration. I'm going to hand it over to Corinne, who's from the Sheep Producers Association, and she's going to give us a bit more background on the eIDs and the effects on the industry. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, John, and welcome everybody. Good evening. My name's Corinne Dooley. I'm the Policy Director for Sheep Producers Australia. Next slide, thanks. So Sheep Producers Australia is the national peak body representing Australia's 20,000 sheep producers. Our producers work hard, and we work hard too, to enhance the productivity, profitability and sustainability of our sector. We do this by advocating on behalf of producers, monitoring investments of producer levies, engaging with our members, consulting with industry and sharing important information and solutions, and improving the understanding of the key issues facing Australian sheep producers. At its heart, Sheep Producers Australia is a policy and advocacy organisation representing sheep producers on national issues, and these could include trade, biosecurity, animal health and welfare, environment, and what we're talking about tonight, livestock traceability. Next slide, thanks. Sheep Producers Australia works with other agricultural and meat industry organisations to advocate on behalf of producers with government. This slide provides a bit of a picture of the main organisations that we work with to achieve enhanced profitability, productivity and sustainability. Sheep Producers Australia membership is made up of the state farming organisations, and these include New South Wales Farmers, Victorian Farmers Federation, Tas Farmers, AgForce, Pastoralists and Graziers of WA, WA Farmers and Livestock SA. Next slide, thanks. So Australian sheep meat industry exports are worth $4.6 billion. We export more than 70% of lamb and 90% of mutton produced here in Australia. The value of what we produce is defined by our capacity to export, and the value of our strategic advantage in these markets is protected by Australia's biosecurity and traceability systems. As the domestic sheep meat industry in Australia is quite mature, opportunities for growth are largely found in our overseas markets. And freedom from significant animal diseases, chemical residues, and a verifiable traceability system underpins the international perception of Australian livestock products. A loss of reputation and confidence caused by livestock disease outbreaks or chemical contamination incidences, or by a lack of an effective tracing system, would incur a large and long-lasting cost for Australian export markets. Next slide, thanks. Prior to January 1, 2025, Victoria was the only state with mandatory eID for sheep. Look where we are now. This slide is the number of sheep moved with an eID in the last year. Making the shift from a visual tag system to an electronic system has continued to enhance the ability to trace animals in the case of a disease outbreak. The time to contain a disease is reliant on the rate of traceability available. As a component of the whole system, eID helps us to trace specific stock and know which others had contact with them, and improves our rate of detection, containment, and response. Next slide, thanks. So what Sheep Producers Australia's role in this whole space? It's to listen to our members, and our members have clearly stated that they want the sheep industry to grow and prosper. It's to formulate policy from that feedback that's going to benefit profitable, sustainable sheep production businesses into the future, with the biggest opportunities for raising profitability sitting with growing our export markets. eID was something that's been on the agenda for a long time, and it has been regularly brought up in our policy council meetings, which is basically the engine room for Sheep Producers Australia, with members representing on that council from state farming organisations and skills-based individuals from across the country. Next slide, thanks. So traceability allows us to detect and manage disease, as well as maintain our international trade markets, with many countries holding individual requirements for specific diseases. Traceability data is collected under state regulation for biosecurity, food safety, and market access. But there are benefits for individual producers. These benefits can include surety of vendors getting paid for the product, number, weight, and grade that they consign, surety of the buyer taking home the stock that they paid the top dollar for, and surety of tracing stock back to the correct property or properties, and not quarantining the wrong producer or chasing the wrong cohort in a disease outbreak. There are clear reasons for eID, and these can be to generate the most complete and accurate movement data set to maximise the potential rate of response in an emergency animal disease incident, to provide assurance for consumers and markets of our food safety, and to support our ongoing international trade for individual businesses, but also for the country as a whole. To provide visibility of unintentional errors and stock movements. So it helps to provide greater traceability integrity than a mob-based system or visual system. My hope is that the top 3 take-home messages from my section here tonight is that the primary benefit of eID is heightened biosecurity response capability. The second greatest benefit is visibility of unintentional errors and stock movements, greater traceability integrity than a mob-based or visual system, and further improving the rate of response in a disease outbreak situation. And the actions of an individual can impact the individual business, the industry, and the country as a whole. And probably the last take-home message is that traceability will continue to evolve in parallel with technology and need. Thank you very much.
So as Corinne said, we just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight into some of the technology and innovation that's starting to occur due to the potential that is created using individual sheep and goat eIDs. So historically, we focused on that mob-based feedback. So all the data you got back didn't identify any specific, it wasn't identified to a specific animal or a specific genetic line. So there was limited visibility of individual performance. Now with eID and individual animal identification, we have that ability to link animal to carcass to data, and that data can provide insightful information for a producer to adopt different on-farm practices or different genetics. Next slide, please. So how does this all work? This is the Hawkeye hook tracking, and it's linking the animal to the carcass. So as the eID is identified on arrival, it is captured at the processing point. It identified along the processing line, and while that's happening, the carcass measurements are recorded, so the data is linked back to that specific animal. So how it works, the tag is scanned, it is tracked, it is measured, and all that objective measurement data can be provided back to the producer via feedback. Next slide, please. So what does this really mean for producers? It means the availability of individual carcass feedback, not just mob averages. So objective measurement and eating quality scores by animal. Better understanding of animal performance. So it replaced those guesswork observations that we make as they're ready to go up into the upper loading ramp and into a truck, but it provides better measurable benchmarks, and we all want benchmarks to be able to track our farms. We can see how on-farms decisions then translate to on the hook. So if you finish them on a paddock of ryegrass and it was X amount of dry matter, you can start measuring that data against what's happening on that carcass. You have improved ability to meet those market specifications. So once you can hit that consistently, you can consistently target those premium market specs that they pay more for. And you can also make more informed breeding and management decisions by identifying those high-performing sires and bloodlines, and in turn accelerate your genetic gain right through your flock through accurate carcass feedback. Next slide, please. So where is this technology heading? So this technology already exists and it's improving, and we've currently got a number of trials that are happening. Industry is investing heavily into the development of this innovation, and the trials are happening now. And they are progressing quickly. The eID is the foundation that makes all this possible. So as you can see in this slide, we've got hook gambles that are etched with vision sensing, and in turn that carries its way through the RFID hook tracker, which is an integrated solution into the chain. Next slide, please. So what does the future of hook tracking look like? Well, there's industry-wide priority being supported by MLA, AMPC and partners. There's collaboration happening across processors, technology providers and RDCs. There's dedicated industry working groups that are progressing through practical solutions. Several R&D projects and pilot programs are currently being funded by MLA, which you'll be able to find on the website. There's ongoing investment to improve the accuracy, reliability and the data quality of these integrations. This becomes possible because of the national rollout of sheep and goat eID. So it won't be long before we're getting clear lean meat yield, eating quality, and also those disease and defects back through the traceability system to be able to make on-farm informed decisions. So that's just a little bit of an oversight of some of the technology and innovation that's happening now. I'll just hand over to you, Jack, to finish off for us tonight.
Okay, so we're just going to go through a few last things here, starting with some tips, reminders, and where you can go to find further information. So as far as tips go, receivers are legally responsible for recording livestock movements onto their picks. The sender can perform the transfer if they wish. Transfers must be recorded within 2 days of livestock arriving at the property. As to when to check, if you're buying from sale yards, they will complete the transfers to your pick. Selling platforms like Auction Plus do not complete transfers. If using an agent should request an upload ID as proof of transfer and verify that the transfers have occurred. Don't just assume. Now we have a number of resources for producers. These will be in the pack that we send out with you. We have links to the sheep and goat eID integrity system page. We have explainer videos on YouTube. We have sheep and goat eID and NLIS flyer. And have the Sheep and Goat Task Force ordering approval NLIS electronic devices for sheep and goats guidance, and the DAF's National Implementation Plan as well. So what are three top takeaways from tonight? Well, first of all, you should make sure that you have correctly tagged your livestock. Placement is key here, as you heard. Number two, make sure that you have the correct color for your eID for species and year of birth. And third, transfers on the NLIS database must be completed within 2 days of making the movement. And with that, that's the end of the presentation. So I'd just like to bring your attention to what's coming up for a moment. As I mentioned, this is the first in a series of webinars based around traceability. I hope you can join us again next Wednesday, the 6th of May, to dive deeper into the next one, which is about PIC reconciliation. And then on the 13th of May, we'll be looking at another one on creating and sharing electronic national vendor declarations, the eNVDs. The QR codes we're going to leave on screen for a moment. The quickest way to get involved is just quickly get your phone out and snap one of those. And I encourage you to register, and please join us again. Now, if I can also direct your attention to the short feedback survey that we have, and I hope you can all take a few moments to fill this out. It only takes a couple of minutes, but it really is a useful way for us to guide the development of future webinars to make sure everything's in line with the things that you need the most and how we can best help. So, and again, probably the best thing to do is just quickly take a snap of the QR code and fill it in after this. For anything else, don't forget to contact the ISC customer helpline. They're always there if you have any questions, and they're here to help you. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out a post-webinar email where we're going to put together a video link of the recording and a transcript of the Q&As, as well as a host of resources, the kind that I mentioned earlier on this topic that you'll find useful. And with that, we've reached the end of the evening's presentation. On everyone's behalf, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Elizabeth, Natasha, George, John, and Corinne for sharing their experiences and insights with us tonight. And to Xander and the rest of the ISC team who worked diligently in the background to make the evening a success. And on behalf of us, we wish you the best and hope to see you again next Wednesday. Enjoy your evening.